I did not understand why y'all were freaking out about the 100 thing.
Yeah, so
Like you guys were talking last night like it was something I was supposed to understand with we're almost at 100. I don't want to be almost 100. So not really sure.
it is. This is the first episode that we're recording since everything went live. And we were expecting a certain amount of like support in our friends and family and maybe even a couple of strangers seeing it. I was not anticipating 100 people. We have 100 views in 4 days and 20 subscribers in 4 days.
Okay.
Now for a starting out podcast, that's insane. If you're like a huge podcast and you're a huge company, like that's nothing, but starting out.
But you
this
got
is
100 people
massive.
to just sit there and listen to us talk.
I told you that once we started, they would come. So, but
Which is actually good because that's probably
Yeah.
one of our least amusing ones. So hopefully they get, more amusing
Yeah.
and entertaining as time goes on.
that was probably looking back like one of the worst ones we've ever
I
recorded.
would agree.
The lighting was bad. The chairs were bad. Like everything was so much worse than I would have wanted it to be.
And in reality, it took 4 takes and 5 or 6 of microphone hits and we
It
shut
took
it
so
off and we
much.
did stuff. And anyway, okay.
But yeah.
This is today's now.
This is today's, and we can officially say welcome back. This is real. It's happening. Welcome back to the Can You Say That podcast, conversations I have with my mom. Now, those 100 people who watched the video and liked and subscribed, I now owe them all a favor. So if you want to be part of that, if you want to be part of that club, you go ahead, like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, the whole 9, because
Look,
look,
like the mob. We're not really gonna
it could be, but it could be the Can You Say That mob, and I'd be good with that. But
the pink and black mafia. Is
The
that
pink-
even a thing?
Pink and Black's
It
a
is
band,
now,
so
right?
probably not.
Oh, okay. So switch it around. Black and pink. How's that?
But
Pinkish
yeah.
black mafia. Whatever you want to call it.
I can't believe this actually happened, to be honest with
Okay.
you.
So today,
Today, so what are
we
we talking
switched
about?
places again.
We did.
So you launched this. You had planned on it, launching it on my birthday.
And we did.
And that was much more important to you than me.
It always
Um,
is.
I'm not huge about celebrating my birthdays. I'm good with us going, hey, let's do we can just have dinner. We can do whatever. It doesn't have to be a big elaborate thing. You, however, do not share that philosophy.
No.
You want the parade and the convertible car and the Sweet 16 party on your 27th birthday. And that is all of those things.
Every day.
So I think today's episode is how you are too much.
So this is the best part. This is airing the day before my birthday.
Right. So tomorrow you will still be too much.
And every
just when
day
you're older.
going forward and every day going backwards. Like
Yes.
I'm never not going to be that way. But
And by the way, for clarification, when we were talking about this decision, it wasn't like I said, this is what we have to talk about.
no.
You were this is one of our first topics that we ever built because it is such a fundamental aspect of who you are.
Absolutely. So explain to the people who don't know, because I know what you mean when you say that I am too
Yes.
much. So explain to the
So-
people who don't.
So, I am a child of the 80s and early 90s. And one of the things that was big at the end of the 80s was this show called Designing Women. Now, whether you agreed with their politics or not, frankly, I don't care.
Also the
But-
80s. So a lot of things have changed since when the
so
show aired in the
they were
80s
very
to the
much like
2020s.
some of the same issues. Ironically, some of the same issues. They're anti-fur supportive or anti-fur.
Yep.
Reproductive rights is in there. AIDS is actually still a topic. It's amazing how much crap 40 years later
we
is
really
still...
didn't develop that much then, I guess, as a country.
So there's certain aspects of it, but there's a lot that are still very similar. Anyway, the original series was based around these 4 women, and one of them is a Suzanne Sugarbaker. And if you notice, by the way, that for whatever reason, when either of us say that name, we say it with an accent that we do not have
Not usually.
most of the time. But Suzanne Sugarbaker has to be said with an accent. It just does.
It absolutely does.
And there were several episodes that when you were a kid, I told you, you have to watch these. It was probably when you were in your late teens was when we first brought this up to you.
Probably.
I said there were several episodes you have to watch because they were specific and you were not really, you were like, oh, whatever. And we went and we found them.
Yeah, because they
On
weren't
different
anywhere.
things. We ultimately now it's all on like Hulu or Netflix or one of
It
those.
is on Hulu.
But there were 2 episodes in particular I wanted you to watch.
Yes.
One was the Dashkoff the writer, where he writes this big thing about being belled.
Yes.
And it is, what is the guy's name? Gerald?
I can't remember
Major
his name.
Dad.
Yeah.
Is married to Delta Burke, who played Suzanne Sugarbaker. Anyway, Major Dad comes on
Which
the
is
show.
another show from the 80s.
Comes on, and he's a writer, and he writes this book called Being Belled, and it is how men deal with the way that they get treated by women, and these certain women, and the way that they basically take men in, kind of covet them for a little while, and then kind of when they're done, they just kind of push them away. There's actually a quote in there, something about you discard them like Kleenex, or like the other one is you leave them in the hot Delta sun like gas station dogs, or something like that.
Yeah.
So there was that episode, and then the what I call the fight episode.
Yes.
So it's actually called
phenomenal.
Reservations for 8. And it's one where they all go, and they all are with their spouses or significant others or whatever. And they do this, they end up having a battle of the sexes fight.
Yeah. Which, again, has
And
not changed in 40 years.
When the Suzanne character and Dashkoff character are arguing,
Yes.
he explains that, we do all of this for you, and everything that men have done throughout the history of the world have been for women like you. And there's a scene in there where she says, "Have you ever heard such drivel?" And he responds with, "We do that so that we can lay our bounty before you and bask in your unattainable beauty." And she said, "Well, now that's a good point." And that was the most Ambrya-esque moment. And that was the other episode I made you watch. So I made you watch those two because you actually didn't believe me.
No. And I don't think I really realized I was that much until probably my late teens, early 20s, when I realized like everything about me was like that. There's another, in part of the Dashkoff episode, he actually says it. He makes a joke about there's not a support group.
Right.
There's not a support group of men who have dated you, married you, or have brushed up against you in an elevator.
Right.
And at the time, I remember thinking that seemed very dramatic. That was when I was probably like in my mid-teens. Towards my now mid-20s, 10 years later, I'm like, oh,
that's what they meant.
There might need to be. And the first time I ever had like this moment where I was just like, oh yeah, that's very, very true and very real, was I got engaged, and me and David had been together for, at that point, 2-3 years when I got engaged. And when I told an old friend of mine who we were kind of like in connection, but not like really talking a ton, I told him, and I was like, yeah, I'm engaged. I'm getting married next Halloween. Da, 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 da. And he goes, really? And I was like, yeah. And I thought it was a super weird comment. And then the follow-up comment he made was, who got you to do that? And I remember thinking, rude. And then as we just continued to talk, he was just like, I can't believe that someone like convinced you to settle down.
When you got married, even your brother quoted the play Hamilton.
Yeah.
Because he said, if the tomcat can get married, and he didn't mean your husband.
No.
Everybody thought they were talking about your husband, but he was actually talking about you.
Yeah. I dated a lot. I feel like this is the point to kind of like notate this. I dated a ton. I'm good with who I was when I was dating a ton. My husband knows who I was at that time. He does not care. This is just how I was.
But when you go back to the no support group joke, because it's a joke in the show. But as your mom, I got contacted by people.
I know.
Who were like, your daughter broke my heart. Okay, what do you want me to do? You had boyfriends that would call or that would come by, and there's more than one incident like this, but we had the one where he would come by the house and sit outside our house in the car and just sob.
Yeah, that happened more than once.
Well, no, there was one in particular that did it for the longest time, just hysterically sobbing in our. We can't make him go away. He's in public. He's in the street. We had a problem. Remember, we had the guy who climbed up our tree, and we had to explain that you cannot continue to do that.
Yep.
And I used to live in great fear of somebody just fixating on you and this kind of thing happening. Now it's not my problem, but I used to live in a lot of fear of that happening for you and somebody just getting super fixated.
Well, I don't think it didn't happen.
Not to get into the like on the weird serial killer side of things. I mean, like just another teenager
Oh,
who
yeah.
gets so fixated. Then I think you were 19 or so when we found a website.
Yep. That was
When you were
dedicated to me.
you were like building your resume or something, and you put something in, and there was
went
this
to, no, I
entire.
remember this so vividly. Me and my stepdad, my dad was typing in our names to see what would pop up because we saw something
Like
on
Google yourself.
Yeah, like something like that. And so he did it, and we got kind of the things we expected to get for him, his Facebook, a couple of things. We're like, whatever, no big deal. We did my name, and we had my Facebook.
We got some stuff we knew you were gonna get, right?
And then we got this website that had been dedicated to me.
Right, because your first name is unusual.
It is. And when I got married, my last name didn't get less unusual. I'm pretty distinct.
And then the description that was in there was definitely you.
And it was, oh yeah, like there was,
and he actually described the date and everything that you guys did. And so that's where you talk about the bumped up in an elevator, because it's a joke, but the reality is you dated this particular person
maybe twice, 3 times. I actually did go back and redate that person after his divorce.
I remember, because that goes to something else on this whole thing that happened, that it really did happen.
Yeah,
he gave us a free phone.
Yeah,
like I was there, so it's and I was not a person that lets you manipulate how you looked or any of the other attributes for stuff. I wasn't. But he gave us a free phone, and then you agreed to go out with him. To be fair, I was standing there, so it's not like you said, "Well, if you give us a phone, I'll go out with you."
No.
He gave us a phone, and then he asked you for your number, and he asked you out for that weekend, I think it was.
Yeah, I went. By the way, he's a really great guy. He got married,
I'm sure he is.
remarried. He's got 3 beautiful children.
But it was this whole web page was dedicated to you.
Yeah, it was.
And it was a combination of a little bit creepy, and then there was a part of you that was like, "That's so cool."
I was really flattered.
Not obsessed even, but he was so taken by who I was.
Yeah. He
built a web page dedicated to my wonderfulness. And you loved everything about that.
I really did.
And he actually didn't jump, as odd as it seems.
He wasn't weird.
He didn't jump into the weird category. You had others that jumped into weird categories.
You could tell that this was not, this had just clearly been on his mind. And this was something he felt the need to get out there, like out of his brain, out of his body, which I completely, that's part of why we do this, is there's stuff like this we want to get out there. But no, he was pretty young then.
He
was, and he took it down when I called him, because it had been up for a couple of years apparently at that point. And when I called him and I was like, I need you to remove this, because when employers are Googling me, this is what's coming up. And he was actually really cool about it and did take it down.
But that kind of thing wasn't a one-off. Like I said, I remember them coming. Even after you didn't live at home anymore, there was one incident in particular where you ended up calling me at night and having us come up there at night to get your date to go home.
Yeah, because
your date did not want to go home.
And literally the fear of my parents coming was what made him leave. Yeah.
And then we had the other times you would call us, and then you would text us and be like, "You don't really have to come, but he needs to think you're coming, so he'll leave." And that was actually a different date than the other person.
I stopped bringing people around after that for a while because they were getting weird.
Super attached very quick. I don't remember who it was. I'm sure you do.
I'm sure.
We joke around about it, but you have been proposed to, not counting David, no less than 8 times.
Yes.
And on the Suzanne thing, that's her whole thing, is that she's like, "Here I am, and here's your alimony checks in order of husband." Or
how long you were married.
Yeah, I mean, because she had 4, I think 4 or 5. You were proposed to no less than 8 times between 15 and 25.
Yes. That's true.
So you averaged 1 a year. Sometimes, though, some years were multiples in the same year, and then what? You have like a dry spell, because then you had some years where you didn't have anybody.
So it wasn't even, that's one of the things that I was trying to explain to a friend of mine when I was trying to explain this kind of thing. And she didn't really get it. She was always like, because she's only ever known me as David's wife. So she didn't have any of this backstory of like why I'm ridiculous. And when I was trying to explain this to her, we start talking. And I do mention that I had been engaged quite a few times. It was a little bit ridiculous. So that's part of why when everybody was like, "Oh, you actually got married," everybody was so shocked. But she seriously talked to me about this, and she was like, "This has to be so much work for you. It's got to be so hard to be like that." And
if it was work, I would agree, but
it's not.
This is all just it's a natural flow for you.
And it's even now, I feel really bad some days for David, because I didn't stop. Like,
right.
I
You
didn't
just expanded your too muchness.
I didn't stop being like this when we got married. Now I'm an incredibly loyal wife. Like, and I'm very possessive
but
wife.
you're still,
That's the other
still
thing.
the too much aspects are still there.
They really
Not necessarily
are.
just in terms of dating. So one of the ones that we've talked to, you and I have talked a lot about this. We as your parents, your biological father and I had made the decision when you were very young.
Yes.
Because the first time somebody asked us if you could model, you were 4 months old. And then when you were about a year. And then we went through this every couple of years. We would be approached by somebody that asked if we would let you model, and we would say no. And then, but random strangers would stop to tell us how beautiful of a child you were. And it wasn't one place we lived, because in Europe, you were definitely a distinct looking child. You were super pale. Well, not super pale, but super pale compared to the country we were in.
Right.
We had these big, beautiful blue eyes and this hugely, like, ridiculously long, thick,
it went down to like
hair.
my butt or something.
It did.
Yeah.
And
It's pretty
total
long
strangers
now.
would stop and like tell us how pretty you were, and they would make all these comments to us. And so you never actually doubted that you were attractive. And that is actually something that I think that lends into this really well, because Suzanne's character as a whole, she is a former beauty queen.
Yes.
She's always been the beautiful one.
Yep.
That's always been everything of who she is. And in your case, the reason we wouldn't allow you to model was, one, the fixation concern, and two, because it was very important to me that you understand that how you physically look is an aspect. It is not the aspect of who you are.
That is, people don't realize this a lot of the time, but that is how David wiggled away in, like, for lack of a better phrase, is because he thought I was smart and pretty. And he made comments like that all the time. Now, it's ironic now because 5 years later, when he's explaining something to me, he'll talk to me like I don't know anything in the world. But see previous episode. But because of that, that's actually how David started getting his in. Is that he was like, "You're so smart and you're so pretty, and you're so ambitious."
Let's be honest though. His in for the permanent.
Yeah.
His first in was, "You're pretty, and I'm going to stand here and stare at you because I think you're pretty." And that was how he first made his way in. But the permanency came from all of the appreciation of all these other aspects of who you are.
Absolutely.
There's something to be said about we all we more than tolerate you being too much.
It's almost expected in a lot of ways now.
Well, no, so for me, right, this is literally who you have been your whole life. Your husband had to accept that this is who you are. And then if he wanted to be with you, this is a part of who you are. This was not a slow roll for him. It was 100% in your face. I'm too much and I'm okay with it.
Yep.
Where I had, we watched it slowly develop over the years. We knew it was happening.
Nope. David very much had to like put up or shut up. Like that was his two options.
One other thing I will say about the show that I love is there's in that episode I talked about the fight episode.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scene where it looks like the actress Delta Burke breaks character of Suzanne Sugarbaker.
Yeah, she's
and what's
dancing.
ironic is that it's actually still within character in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
but it fits into the same too much theory because I showed it to you after it came onto Hulu or YouTube or however we were able to pull it up.
Right,
and you watch it happen. Because Dash Goff is her husband. The guy who plays Dash Goff is her husband.
They're actually married in real life, right?
They got married after like 6 weeks together.
Yeah.
And had like this very, very Southern wedding. Plantation, gorgeous. Like she did the whole Scarlett O'Hara deal.
Perfect.
But when they dance in that scene, behind his head, she has her hands and she does this. And she's actually looking at her real life wedding ring while looking at her real life husband.
Yep.
And that is also a you thing.
Oh yeah. So like, here's the thing. When I decided I wanted to get married, that is kind of how this went down. I went to David and said, I'm looking to be married in the next few years. I'm no longer looking to play around. So either you need to get on board with that or we're ending things because I'm not waiting. I'm not doing 5 more years of back and forth and play around. I'm not doing that. Okay. And he went, cool. By the way, we had been together maybe 6 months when I had that conversation with him. We moved separately after that, ironically, moved back in together 6 months later and had that same conversation again. He turned around and he was like, okay. And you could tell something apparently at that point clicked for him and he had a goal. And so because you must give left brains a checklist. A little bit. And so he had a goal, and I was like, this is what I want. In the next 5 years or so, I want the house, the wedding, I want the baby, all in the next 5 years. And to David's credit, he completed everything a year early because that's how he is. But when this all happened, I decided I wanted to get married, and I told him, I want to get married, so you need to figure it out to get good with you. When I got my engagement ring, you're right, I wore it every single day. I wore it everywhere. This was also pre-COVID, so I had a reason to wear it everywhere.
Right.
And I was annoying.
Yes.
My husband's
Was?
my husband's mom is actually, she I don't know what the term for this is. There's like a career term for it, but she actually
like a jewelry
specializes
designer
in
and
antique jewelry.
restorer.
Yeah. So she specializes in finding and restoring antique jewelry. So I don't know if she gifted it or if David bought it or how that played out, but he got my wedding ring from her. It is from like the 1910s or something. And it is beautiful. And I wear it everywhere when I go out for things, like when we go to events, when we go out to dinner, I wear it like this. And we've been married now almost 2 years.
And he'll be actively like holding your hand and carrying a baby, and you're still like, hello.
Yeah. And when I don't wear it, it's such a weird thing for me not to wear it publicly that actually our first video went live this last week, and someone noticed I hadn't been wearing, like my wedding ring wasn't in the photo and wasn't in the video. And they were like, so are you and him okay? Because like your wedding ring's not there. And I was like, no, by the way, which is why I put my wedding band on, because I got that comment. But that was just so unusual to people that they were like, where's your wedding ring? What is happening? Because I'm super annoying with it.
So that goes back to her, being, yeah.
Yep.
So the last episode and where the too much phrase comes from is actually one that's called like reservations for 12 plus Ursula or whatever. And it's the same couples who went out. So the whole group goes and they take their kids, grandkids, the whole deal, and they hire a nanny, and the nanny is named Ursula.
Yep.
And she is stunning. Yeah. She is absolutely, I can't remember what country they claim that she's supposed to be from, but she is like every day, let's go swim in the water in her bikini and let's go do this. And so all the guys are responding to her and her over the topness. And all of a sudden you have these men who are not into fitness up there doing the fitness stuff and being like, 6 a.m. swim in the ocean sounds like a great plan. No, it doesn't, but whatever.
She's also like, sorry, production. She's also like 20. And everybody else in the show is like
so
45
one
plus.
of the women, well, no, so that's where Charlene just had the baby, and
that's right.
And the other women, 2 of them were one was in her 30s, one's in her late 30s, and then the character was in her 40s,
right?
And that's why they have the kids and the grandkids and the whole deal. And in that episode, Suzanne pulls the nanny aside and basically fires her.
She's like, you need to leave.
And when she goes through firing her, she explains why she's being fired. Is she's like, basically, she says, you are too much. And what I mean by that is your hair is too big. Your boobs are too big. Your smile is too big. Your personality is too big. You are too much. I know, because I am also too much.
I live for that quote.
You embraced like a champion.
I live for that.
You were like, that is me. I know I am too much. And here's my smile. And here's my personality. Here's my theme for the dinner for this week. I mean, it is 100% that you know you're too much and you love everything about it.
There is some of that. Another like facet of that I find super fascinating that kind of gets overlooked a lot is the reason she's doing this is because all the other, it's not because she feels like shit.
She doesn't feel threatened.
No,
the other women do.
Other women.
Yes.
So she's like, for my friends, my loved ones, everybody
Actually,
I care about.
At the end of the episode, she puts the little tiara on her head and she tells them, "You're welcome, ladies. You're welcome."
Yeah,
something like that. Which, by the way, I would like to point out to everybody that when we started to film this, you actually went, I need a tiara. Like you knew you were short one tiara at the end of the statement.
I knew I was going to be. But that is something, I think that's a facet of that gets overlooked in that episode a lot, is she's not threatened as the other person who's too much. She knows her friends are threatened, and that's enough for her to be like, and I'm going to go take care of this. I'm going to go stomp you out because that is what's important to me. And I do think that is a reoccurring thing that in this show, especially with this character, is that in a day-to-day, she is like, whatever, I'm the best, I'm amazing, it's great. But there's also these like small facets throughout the show.
It's not as wonderful as somebody putting a crown on your head or shopping.
It's not.
It's that quote, right? Because she's seen as very vapid in that regard.
She is, but then there's a bunch of these other little episodes. The very first episode, one of the other characters' daughters wants to go into being a beauty queen.
Mm-hmm.
And so Suzanne stops everything that she's doing, and she stops it all to get this kid through to number one. And
because it's what she wanted.
Because it's what she wants, what the little girl wants. And so, and that's actually one of my other ones that I love so much, is that there's a scene in that episode that very much plays to what I think a lot of women have to deal with, where she's sitting there and she's like, I've done all this. This is everything I've ever done is this. And I don't know.
This is what I know how to do.
And I don't know about this now. And I don't know what I'm going to do after this. And then the other part I love is actually, we'll talk about when we do your episode for her sister, is, Julia Sugarbaker, who's a whole different problem.
Yes.
But that's one of the things I think that like often gets overlooked, is that she's incredibly vapid. Yeah, she's very vain.
She's conceited and self-centered and selfish.
Absolutely.
And weirdly enough, she's also very protective of the people she
willing
loves.
to fight and die for these other women.
She wants to support any way they can. In later episodes, and I don't know if you've even watched it, like Charlene has a baby, and then she keeps trying to do stuff for the baby. It is way over the top. Like, she bought a little wig for the baby because the baby didn't have any hair. And she did, but it's all this other stuff. And the other thing that she has is this relationship with Anthony. He is truly her best friend. Now, in 2022, he would be her gay. Although in the character, he's straight.
Yeah.
I mean, in the show, he's a straight character.
No, but that's very much the vibe.
Because everything he does. And she genuinely loves him.
She does.
Everything, she tells him stuff she doesn't tell anybody else. She's like, she doesn't have to put on the show for him because he's not a man that she's competing for his attention for. Yep. And he's not a woman that is either intimidated by her or afraid and feeling like she needs to be in competition, because how do I compete with a former beauty queen?
Nope.
And as a boring wife of 3 kids, how do I compete with my husband's ex-girlfriend who is a former beauty queen? I can't.
Nope.
And you have had that kind of thing happen, where the other women that, like, of people you've dated in the past and things like that, you can't be friends with typically their wives and girlfriends or whatever. Even if you guys broke up on good terms and were like, hey, this isn't working, we're not really a couple, but we get along great.
Yeah.
Even those, you don't get along with the other wives, but not because of you.
No, and that's one of those
they're
things
not interested.
That is, yeah, they're definitely not. One of the things I found fascinating about that was I was never, like, there's nobody in David's life that I'm threatened by.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, he picked me. Like, I don't need to worry about the rest of it. David was hard enough to catch as it is. Good luck catching him while he's married to me. Like, it's gonna be a hard time.
Fair, somebody would almost have to, like, sledgehammer him for him to notice a lot, just because he's like,
also
what?
True. My husband is so painfully unaware of people thinking
that he's attractive.
Yeah. Which is, again, it's hilarious because when we go out in public together and we actually are truly done to go out in public together, because I do think, a difference between, like, running to the grocery store in your sweats and us going to dinner.
So I'll give a great example of that. You guys went to a party right after your son was born.
Yes.
For his job.
Yes.
And we joked around about it because you got hit on and you are used to it and you knew how to handle it. And your husband was like, she was flirting with me like the whole drive home. You were like, because you came home and you told me, you were like, he had no idea. I was like, dude, she was hitting on you. And he was like, who? And he was like, I was talking to a girl. What? And so, and it's not a naive thing. Like, it's truly like he just totally
he could care
misses.
less.
Well, I think he misses it.
He does. But he also holds
you
a lot of
going
pride.
to a work thing with him.
Yeah.
Dressed up, obviously going as a couple.
Yes.
And you still got hit on. And you were definitely, I would say, not comfortable in your body, because that was like 3 months postpartum, maybe?
Not even.
Because I was with you trying to figure out what to wear.
Yeah,
and I know you were having
anything.
a hard time. and in the end, you decided to play up the assets that you inherited from having the baby, which were your butt and your boobs.
Play up what you got, ladies.
And so you went with the 50s-esque look.
I did.
Because it gave off the good vibe. But it was very much you were fully, not prepared, but you knew how to handle the inappropriate hit on. Even though, let's be honest, you got hit on by an engineer, so it wasn't that bad. You were like, are you flirting with? Oh, you are. Oh, that's cute. No, I'm married.
It wasn't great.
I'm married to one of you.
Well, and the thing that was really funny about that is that David was painfully aware of when people hit on me. He's not aware when people hit on him.
Right.
But he is so aware. And to the point we got into the car and he was like, he said something about like he felt like a rock star because he's never been in a room where so many people clearly wanted to sleep with his wife. And but I can't remember exactly how he said it. And he's not facing me. So I can't even confirm if that was close.
All he's listening for is us to say we screwed up.
Yep. But he seriously, like, he said something like that. And I was like, yeah. And then there was this one guy who just would not stop staring at me. And it was just getting weird. And David was like, yeah, I think he was trying to figure out if he could hit on you and just couldn't make it over there, like over the threshold to do it.
So,
but he's so freaking prideful of that. He's like, this is my too much wife.
Yes.
He's very much that Will Smith meme where like he's standing there like this, like pointing at his wife. Is very much what David's like all the time.
I don't think David would slap somebody. Not like that.
I think that you are.
No, I don't see him open hand slapping. That doesn't strike me as a David thing. Although, admittedly, not to get into that whole thing, I think David would see that this is where his redneck side would come out because that's the way a woman hits. Men don't open-handed palm each other in the face. You know what I mean?
No,
so I think the Texas would pop up and be like, "No, I'm just gonna ball up my fist and punch you in the face." I'm also not going to do it in front of millions of people on camera because I can't deny that later.
That's happened. So David has never punched anybody with me, but there was I can't remember where we were, if we were out to a restaurant, but someone like grabbed my ass or like flipped my skirt, something like that. And I like was shocked because David literally had his arm around my waist. And it wasn't David who did it, which is what the first thing people have always said when I tell the story. They're like, are you sure it wasn't your husband? No, because David's not subtle. He would have just told me it was him. But someone did that. And I remember David turning around. I think we're still living in the city. David turning around and went, are you fucking kidding me? Okay, really?
But that's happened to you more than once with different men in your life before David.
Yeah, but David was willing to like cold cock someone.
No, I was going to say, so I know that it happened when you were about 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
And the same thing. And the person you were dating at that point actually got into a ton of trouble.
Yes.
Because he did
cold cock someone.
Drop the guy. So I give David some maturity for going, I don't want to go to jail today.
It took a second.
Especially because you weren't even 100% sure who had done it.
Oh, yeah.
Where the first time you knew who had done it.
Well, and it wasn't even, this is the other thing that the
other time the person was not subtle.
No.
At all.
That's one of those things is that I don't like about being too much. When you are too much like that, the whole world seems to think they are owed a piece of you.
That it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just like men who are pigs. It's also like women who want to touch you. Like I get my hair stroked in public.
I can see. I am much less too much than you. Like I don't even qualify as the much, let alone too much. But I remember a coworker one day was talking to me, and as she's talking to me, she's going like this, and then she looked at me and she goes, "You are a grown woman, and I am playing with your hair. I am so sorry." And like you could tell, she was overcome with shock that she probably had 20 years on me.
Yeah,
but she was obviously so surprised to learn that
she was like this.
petting me. And I actually told her at the time, and I said, "That's okay. My mom does it all the time while she's talking to us."
She does,
and I think that might be where it's less. In that particular is less invasive. Sorry, production.
I almost broke the camera.
Is less invasive to us because my mom has literally done it our whole lives. She's a toucher. My grandmother was the same way. That whole Southern thing.
I've did this like 4 times now.
That whole Southern thing where she would touch you all the time. She would hold your hand while she was talking to you. She would. Yeah. My mom does the same. But particularly with people that she's close to or cares about.
When it's your family member, like I don't love when people do this.
Other people will be like, you're like, why are you petting me?
I had that happen.
I'm not a celebrity. It's not like, ooh, it's not like somebody walked up and was like, oh my God, I got to touch so-and-so.
No.
I mean, but it's like.
Also, if we get that popular, don't just walk up and touch us. That's weird. But
I'll just hit you.
Don't do this. We'll take pictures all day long.
Unlike the two of us, well, I will not take pictures all day long. So she's speaking for her. Because that's actually been a thing her whole life. She'll take pictures forever.
And now my son does it.
Literally from birth, right? So now that I think back, maybe you were born as too much and we didn't have a choice. Because when you were born, first of all, nobody had phones in their cameras. So my mom had a real live click camera. And
there's like 7,500 pictures of me.
Oh, yeah. You took a picture pretty much from the time you were born. One of my favorites of you, again, this was not posed because that wasn't even an option. You're standing in front of a pumpkin and you're going like this, and you are a year old. You are full on model posing at a year old. And we said, go stand with your pumpkin. And you like popped a knee up, or popped your foot back and put your hands on it and posed like this on the pumpkin. And we're like, and when the picture came back, because we had to wait for him to come back then, back in the day.
The 90s.
And there's this picture of you posing like a freaking commercial for a pumpkin. And we were like, well, what are we going to do with this? I mean, you were literally, that was your first birthday. You were a year old.
So
and that was it.
My husband is on the other side of the camera, and he's
actually
dying.
Vividly laughing. I'm watching him do it.
Like, we're watching the whole chair shake.
But you have always been, and you are now, and have always been okay with that.
Yeah, I have no shame in there.
You've always been like, this is my too muchness, and I love me about it. I love the me and the too muchness.
I do. And other than like this one part where there's two parts, the only two issues I've ever had with being too much is that people inherently think you're selfish, and I'm not. I'm very self-centered, which is a very different thing.
I think it depends on the selfishness.
That's true.
I think it depends on what you're talking about and where it is. And I definitely think that is adjusted with maturity.
It has, because like most other that way.
No, most other 12, 13-year-olds are selfish by nature.
They have to be.
They have to learn to
they're 12
not
to 13 years old. They should be. And the other one is the fact that, when you are this much and you are, I made a comment about how I was like, stop traffic charming not too long ago to David. And David was like, I know, as someone who stopped in traffic. And so, which he thought was hilarious. But as that kind of thing, people feel like they are owed a piece of you all the time. And it is a really
hard. Is it owed or entitled? Do they feel like they're entitled to a piece? Because I mean, so when it's been several years back now, my parents, my dad and his significant other were visiting, along with several other people. But you walked in the room, and when you came in,
I know exactly what you're about to say.
And my dad was just sitting there astounded, and then you walked right back out. And I can't remember why you came in and then had to go back out, or whatever it is you had to do. And he looked at me and he goes, "Does she always do that?" And I said, "Do what?" And he's like, "She walks in the room and takes up all the space in the room, takes up all the energy, all the everything in that room gravitated towards you."
Which is hilarious, because I was only...
like you were running in to drop something off.
Yeah.
But it was also in this super dramatic flair form that you are just naturally. So you came in and I can't remember what you had, but you're like, and there's this and this and and here we go. And that was just who you are. And like the rest of us didn't move. We're like, yep, that's her. And my dad, who has not spent as much time with you, obviously, as I have, because he lives across the country, was just like, she just walks into the room and sucks up all the energy, doesn't she? I was like, pretty much since she was born.
I remember this so
you're
vividly.
You're not sorry for that. You're totally okay with that. You don't want to change that aspect of who you are, because it's all part, this over dramatic flair side is all part of who you are. Well,
and this is actually something I remember him saying. My wedding was a couple years ago. And for my wedding, I had a full ridiculous wedding, right? During COVID, I had a masquerade ball for 60 people. And it was beautiful. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I came in because everybody had kind of like congregated at your house. Because most of the people who came to the wedding were from your side of the family. So a bunch of these people are here. And I go walking in, and David calls it...
This was pre-wedding, right?
This was pre-wedding. Yep. David calls it... He says I work a room.
You do. No, you do.
He is very content to just stay in the other side, and then he'll just smile and hold my waist. And
2 poses.
Yes, because he poses in 2 poses for pictures. And so he literally... I remember this so vividly. He was talking with like my uncle, I think, and I did my whole thing. I walked around and said hello. I was happy to see everybody. Everybody was so sweet. And I come back to David, and David smiles and puts his arm around me, and he realizes that he has now taken on some of this too much, because he's standing there with me, fully posed, because we know people are going to start taking pictures any minute. So he's still having a full conversation posed with me around his way. And we get into the car afterwards, and he just laughs. And he is just like, I never thought in a million years this would be my life, where I have like a natural inclination to just stop and pose when you hold me, because I know.
And hold the pose while we're doing anything else.
And everything. And then I said something about, I think I said hello to this person. Did you say hello to so-and-so and so-and-so? Because my husband's not the best socially. So he will forget that he should, especially if an event's for him. He needs to go say hello to people.
Well, and because a lot of these people he either had never met or had only met once.
Like once, yeah. And so he was like, did you do the thing though? Like, you talked to everybody, right? Because I didn't, and I need you to. And I was like, yes, I did. And he goes, thank God that you're working a room. And then we were home already, and he left the room and went and played his computer for another 20 minutes.
So what's funny is at your wedding, knowing that you were so overwhelmed and doing other stuff, we actually went and did that for you because we went to table to table because we knew David is not going to do that naturally.
No.
And you guys were obviously, this was about your day. It wasn't so much about you doing that. So we went and did that for you. But even I had to make a conscientious effort to go table to table and to talk to everybody because that's just not a side of my personality that I have. I'm social and I will talk to you, but I don't have a need or a draw or maybe it's a compelling sense to go table to table and talk to every single person that came. I'm like, hiya, here I am, have a drink.
Nope, I'm really good at that part. In another world, in another lifetime.
You want to do it.
Yeah.
You enjoy that.
I love being the hostess. Yeah, that's the thing I love.
Going to that thing, right? You love that. You know, in so many ways when we talk about that, when you go back to the Suzanne character, when they're talking about her, she is usually credited as being a Scarlett O'Hara-esque time frame. So Southern Belles, pre-Civil War.
Yeah.
When women did host these huge elaborate dinners and wore these. I
would have been great at that.
Carried a parasol and wore these clothes that were so freaking over the top princess dress like on a Tuesday, and you know the wear the corset and reel your waist in so you look really tiny and let your hips, and you have to eat before the barbecue. You know, like in Gone with the Wind, she eats before she goes to the barbecue because she's like, you can't go to a barbecue and eat in front of people.
How dare.
So you didn't. You were like a picker for a long time, except for my house.
Yeah.
You don't eat in public very much. And even when you were at your tiniest, you really didn't. Sometimes you would do it so people would get off your case.
Yeah.
But except for my house where you just walk in and you're like, okay, I'm hungry.
Well, yeah.
But everybody else's, you're like, you pick and you're like, oh, I'll get a little plate of this or a little. So you definitely do that Southern Belle-esque.
Well, even in my own home. So
like, wait. So for clarification, though, you were not raised that way.
No.
I grew up in California.
Yeah.
We were a military family. We moved around. There was no Southern belle-ness to who we are.
Nope.
And somehow you did. You had to have done it in a different lifetime because you came with that ingrained in who you are.
Well, even now, so we just had dinner with one of my closest friends and her husband about 2 weeks ago now. And or last weekend, something like that. And when they got to our house, she was kind of laughing because she knows she was a bridesmaid at my wedding. She is one of my closest friends. She's absolutely wonderful. I think we've referenced her before, and because she's this feet tall and just freaking goddess. But she comes into my house, and her husband are wearing like their typical Saturday outfit. They're wearing like jeans and shorts, and everybody's comfortable. And she's got like blue and pink hair now. She's living her best life, and it's super short. It's really cute. And she shows up, and she realizes that. And just pure Ambrya fashion, which is exactly how she said it. I am in a dress because I'm hosting a dinner on Saturday. That's what I wear. And so I am in a cream colored cottagecore-esque dress. David is in a coordinating outfit of his khaki pants and pink shirt. And we coordinate 100%.
Yes, all the time.
All the time. And I have to say, some people have asked me if that irritates him. He actually coordinates with me a lot of the time on his own. Like it is a goal he heads for, and it's fine. So not a thing I make him do all the time.
Well, no, and then you guys match the baby.
And then we make the baby match always. That is something we do, and eventually we're going to have to stop.
There's some other reasons that you do that for when we go out in public and stuff, but that's all secondary because you're right. You do it at your own house.
I do. And she got into the house, and she comes in, and we had made dinner, and even our dinner table for just dinner casually with the four of us and our baby had placemats and matching place settings, and wine had been paired with everything. And I'm always like that.
You are. Because I was going to say, so yesterday we celebrated our collective birthdays, mine and
my dad's, my stepdad's.
And we had asked for apparently the wrong thing because we were thinking we were going to get a little bit of phyllo dough with some custard in the middle and some berries sprinkled on top.
No.
And like a lemon fruit tart. And instead, you had this thing and you had your husband out in there cutting equal slices of peaches so that you could make the peach fan all the way around the tart. We were eating in the dark next to the fireplace or next to the fire pit and berries on top and everything else. But you had to have the full peach ring all the way around to where it was perfect. And lard-based, thank you, a lard-based pie crust.
Yep.
Because that is all the part of who you are.
And it's never, well, like even yesterday, your favorite mythical animal is dragons. So we themed the
Which, by the way, I didn't realize not everybody has a favorite mythical animal.
Yours
I think
is
it's
dragons.
weird. Mine is dragons. I know yours is mermaids.
It is. But with that, actually also ties right into the too much,
It
like
does.
the mermaids, 100%. But because yours was dragons and that's what we themed it as, everything had that theme.
Yes, smoke,
So
dragon, even the baby's costume or outfit for the day.
I did. I put him in a dragon onesie.
Was themed. But that isn't something you want to change either because it's who you
No.
are.
I love that about myself. And I think it's so weird when people are the opposite. Because even here's why. Because even with you being the opposite and not having a lot of the too much, you still have a little bit.
I have moments of too much.
You
Yeah.
have moments, and you always have just let me kind of just be that person in our
So
like
in that
family.
regard, I was going to say in that regard, I'm like David. When you pick a theme, I'm like, okay, I have to operate within her theme. We all kind of wait for you to pick
Yeah.
the theme, and then even your brother is like, "What's the theme?"
They're like, my brother has opted out of
So,
going to events for that
The
exact
zoo.
reason.
I was going to say the theme, the zoo, right?
The zoo
You were
is a
like,
good one.
everybody needs an animal print. I'm like, I literally don't wear them, and when I mean I don't wear them, I mean like I own 0. I don't wear them.
Didn't matter.
I ended up channeling Peggy Bundy into Go because it's the most I could wrap my head around. Or those zebra striped pants, it's the best I could do. Now,
Didn't care.
everybody else fully was like, you were in a one-piece jumpsuit, leopard print, the whole deal. Your brother
Yeah.
bought a T-shirt that said Hakuna Matata.
My kid was in like a jungle safari outfit,
Yes, with the
complete with
hat.
hat and boots.
But all that too much.
But I don't get it when other people aren't like that.
Because to you, it's is.
It's
It's not even work for you. It just is.
No, and I have a group chat with 2 friends, and one of my friends told me that she thought she was a lot until she met me, and then she was like, I stopped feeling that way very, very quickly. The other person in this group chat, he actually was like, I've never met someone who is like this in my life.
I would
He's
agree.
from a pretty dramatic family, and he was still like, and you could seriously wipe the floor with all of them. It is ridiculous.
So
And he just deals. They all do,
But-
which is insane.
when-
Everybody just lets me be like this.
There
No
were
one fights
other-
back.
So there were other people that when they had heard that I'd made this comment about you being Suzanne Sugarbaker, that they were surprised that that was the character that I associated with you. And yet you love that. You
I do.
love
I take a lot
everything
of pride
about
in it.
being her.
Yep.
And you've embraced it to say, well, this is my Suzanne Sugarbaker aspect. And I'm
Yep.
okay with it. And I might just wear a tiara to the grocery store if I decided to.
If it was the choice I wanted to make. But every time I do something like that, like right now, no joke, you can tell that my husband dressed my son and himself without my information, without my help or anything, because neither of them match me. This is a very normal, like I'm in a crop top and matching sweats with full makeup, full hair, and jewelry, because this is the only way I wear like a sweatsuit. And I can't say enough, like, I didn't know this was weird, because it was always just how it was in our family. I was always too much, and you were always just supporting the too much, always. And even now, like, even as our family expanded, right? Because me and my brother were for a little bit on our own. And everybody just kind of let it happen. And then as we gained new family members, like my stepdad, like my husband, and now my son, everybody else just kind of lets it happen. No one like pushes back. We went to breakfast on Easter because we wanted to go to this one place, and they had like an amazing Easter brunch. And my mom calls and she goes, "What are you wearing?" You remember this? I remember this. So I think this is hilarious. And I said, "So I'm going to do it really low key," which is the thing I remember saying. And I remember saying it in front of my husband, and my husband looked at me like, "Have you lost your mind?"
And I was going to say, I do remember that. I ended up wearing all black because, well, that's what I own. Because you were like, no, I'm just going to wear my black, purple, and blue cardigan or
my black
calf.
dress, my Kafgan thing that
my
is.
this, and you went through this simple of what you're going to do. And
It
I'm
was
like,
very simple.
I'm like, holy crap, kid. You have like 7 layers, and we're just getting in the car to drive to breakfast and back.
Didn't matter.
So
Still like that.
as we are wrapping up today, you usually ask me for like what my pithy comment is
I do.
or whatever.
What's your pithy?
So in this case, I don't know how pithy it is as much as it's fact.
Okay.
Is that you love that about who you are. You
Yeah.
love the Suzanne Sugarbakerness of your personality, which, by the way, that should be from here on out. That's an adjective.
The Suzanne.
The Suzanne Sugarbakerness. You love that about who you are. You love, and so I would say that's one of those things I don't expect you to apologize for. Now, there are times I wish you
don't.
would tone it down a little, but
Like Easter in the zoo.
But I think that I'm so used to it, and if you toned it down too much, you would risk losing part of that of your personality, and because I am so much less too much than you.
Yeah.
That I actually think that we have a pretty decent balance between the two of us. Where sometimes I think you need me to say, okay, this is too much. Like you don't need the crown, you do not need a tiara. To go to Sequest. Okay, we can go to the aquarium without the tiara.
There is something to be said there, because even now we're planning Halloween for my son.
To be fair, we've been planning Halloween for your son since you got pregnant.
So we're planning his Halloween costume, and by the time this airs, it will have already happened. But there is an outfit, like a whole theme for his first costume that everybody has to adhere to.
Because we don't have to, but yes.
You do. Because so
you
we
want to
made,
go? You're going to wear the costume.
and nobody fights that. Everybody is just like, all right, he's going to be a ringleader for us to go to Evermore, which is a fantasy park here that we go to easily once a quarter, if not more, because we love it.
Yeah.
And so they're doing a Halloween theme, as always. We're making my son a ringleader, and I told everybody had to adhere to that. He was a ringleader. We all need to be circus freaks. Everybody could pick their own circus freak or their own circus thing, but he was being a ringleader, and I needed everybody to go with that. And then he has a second Halloween costume for the day of Halloween.
Because he can't be in the same costume twice.
He can't. And so he has a secondary costume for Halloween itself for everybody else to now adhere to that theme.
I was going to say, and yet we just naturally went, well, these are the things we now need. I mean, 100% we did.
No one argues with this, especially, and no one did before my son, but no one does now either.
So, but I would definitely say your Suzanne Sugarbakerness is something
else.
It is, but it is definitely one of the things that we love about you.
It is.
And you take zero offense to the fact that is how we refer to you first. And second of all, and this is one of my favorite things, is you aren't bothered by the fact that this is who you are, and you don't apologize for it.
No, this is really one of those. It's like, put up or shut up, because frankly, I'm not changing. I suspect I'll actually get worse as I get older.
I worry a little bit if you have a girl.
I worry not because that I'll be worse. I worry that I'll make her worse.
I was gonna say, so I'm afraid that she might figure out she is also too much.
I also want to point here. You said
I broke the generation.
Yeah, you broke it. But the other thing I'm going to point out, I'm not pregnant. The way you said that almost sounded like I am. No. Because frankly, I would just be on the floor in a fetal position crying. But
so I gave you mine. What's yours? What's your wrap up? Because right now I can see. I was going to say I can hear production. Like going, I timed you up. I timed you guys up because we tend to run long because we talk a lot. Go figure.
But one of the things I would say is like, take pride in who you are, no matter what that's going to be. If you are the like not too much person and you're fine if your spouse has a theme for everything, cool. And if you're good with that, be good with that. But if you are too much, don't be afraid of that. If someone tells you you're too much, tell them to go find less. Because frankly,
that is actually one of my favorites that I've actually heard you say.
It's because
if I'm too much, go find less.
Because if I am too much, I'm not going to dumb down
elsewhere.
Fornicate elsewhere. I'm not going to dumb down my personality, who I am, whatever, for your comfort.
I don't think it's a dumb down. I think it's a dull.
Whatever.
What is it? Dull
my
shine.
That's my dad's 100%. He says that stuff all the time. But I'm not going to dull down who I am for you to be happy. Either you're happy with me 100% how I am, or you can go find less. Because frankly, just because it comes down to the fact that when you're telling someone who is too much to dull down who they are or take away some of that, you're telling them to change who they are as a person.
For my sake.
For your sake. For your comfort even. Not even for your sake, because if it's a dangerous thing, that's definitely different. It's not for your sake. It's for your comfort. Either get uncomfortable and adjust around, because I'm not saying that you should have to be uncomfortable to be in a relationship with someone, but if their too muchness always makes you uncomfortable, then that ain't the relationship for you, boo. if I'm too much, go find less. And frankly, this is the other thing I don't usually say that is attached to that. But let's be honest, if you go find less, you're going to be wishing you stayed with the person who was too much. And I know that's true because I cannot tell you the amount of people who, the minute I don't post with my wedding ring, who are in my DMs, in my messages, like, you and your husband aren't having problems, are
I was
you?
going to say, so we already know our topic for next week.
We do.
And so it will tie into that aspect, but 100% be your Suzanne.
Be your Suzanne. If I'm too much, you go find less. Now with that, this is happening. We're going to have our next episode next week, next Wednesday. We post pretty regularly on Wednesday. All of our social media handles are actually down in the bottom.
In the description.
Somewhere. Or they're up here. Don't know. But they're somewhere. We've linked them all. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all of the fun things. And then, as always, if you want to be part of the mob that gets a favor from me.
Now we're the mob.
We could be the mob.
You
We're
gotta
mafia.
pick one. Like the mob is like a whole group of people that like you could just have mob mentality, and that's not a good thing.
Okay, if you want to be part of the favor mafia, go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. We'll be back with you next week. Bye.